Hello everyone and welcome to this creative writing poetry webinar called Spark, Finding Your Voice Through Spoken Word. My name is Sarah Grant. I'm a Glasgow based, born and bred filmmaker and poet, and I'm here pre-recording this webinar today under lockdown conditions. Well, filmmaker is easier to understand. Some of you might not understand what I mean when I say a spoken word poet. Spoken word artists and poets specifically write with the intention of their words being performed out loud. So they know that whatever they're putting on the page is not going to just live there. It is going to have an entirely new life in some way by giving it an out loud performance as well, which if you or in every drama club you could ever find from the young age as I was, that is extremely appealing. I also came to poetry through filmmaking, and with filmmaking you have to figure out what it is you want to say and then bring it in characters, and I go through this whole production process. Poetry is fantastic because it is accessible and it's instant. You have something that you want to say, you can sit down, write it, and then it can be ready to be performed right then and there, whereas film's a process. So I find poetry an incredible art form, and I'm very happy to be talking about it specifically in regards to writing your own stories today. I'll be going to be blending things that I've learned from film and things that I've learned from poetry, and bringing it all together under the title of Spark. So Spark is a full-length spoken word show that I wrote and performed late last year, November last year, and it was supposed to be touring at some point this year, but that didn't happen. It was a real joy to put together. I knew that I wanted to write something specifically about witches and womanhood and persecution, tie it in with my own personal story, and see how all those stories and all those roads and all those narratives came together, and it just seemed to actually just work. It was a personal journey. I said it over one night. It starts with a bunch of confessions that would have got me burned back in the day, and it ends with a bonfire. And I can talk about it for ages, but the best thing I can do is just to show you the opening. Hello. In fact, that was rubbish. I can do that better. Hi. In fact, tell me a story. And when I ask you to tell me a story, I really mean welcome home. Because my ears are the Airbnb on the holiday of your dreams, and when I say your dreams, I really mean my purpose. If you're on a journey, then baby, I'm your designated driver, solid 5-star Uber review, you passenger accomplice. Willing companion, synchronized compass northward on the highways of our histories. Have you ever rode the waltzers solo after stuffing your face full of fairground fodder? Then you stand up and you try to go out through the indoor, pushing at the pool gate, dizzy and sick, afterburn of life rising in your throat, Earth's rotation spinning between your ears? I have. A lot. Which is to say that I have a lot of experience standing still when the way we move through space is the smallest force trying to push me around. Put another way, I'm a good man in a storm. I'm good at floating. The water never gets above my head, only directly to, I mean, I will never let you drown. When the waters of this world wash inward and carve coastlines to your front door, my body will be sandbag and sail. It's been a while since I've had to bail out the storm. I mean, I won't bail out on you. If you ask me to, I will carry you over every horizon. Which is to say, yeah, I know I say a lot. I have said a lot. I know I talk too much, but I've swallowed down so many stories. I got tired of bringing up the past, so tell me one of yours. Lace your voice with starlight, because Christ knows I'm scared of the dark. When I say the dark, I mean the silence. When I say the silence, I mean please don't leave me. I don't want to be alone. Alone this girl falls in the forest, and who gives a shit if anyone's around to hear? Can you learn to love the garden when it looks like the underbrush? Looks like the darkest part of the story, the bit they leave out the fairy tales. I am not a princess, nor warrior, not hero, nor sidekick, not magic wand or spindle prick. I'm the witch they left out of the story. The mostly good kind. who comes and goes by bubble and holds you as you cry. My magic can hold back the dark. I mean, I love you. My name is the backbone of your question mark. That thing you didn't know, let's find it out together. I mean, hello. I can't wait to get to know you. So a couple of weeks ago, I did a very specific lockdown version of the show called Spark the Bedroom Edition. It definitely looked like I was recording porn. I was not. I rejigged the show to specifically work within the setting just of my own bedroom, and I did the entire performance using my bed as the stage, and it was a joy to really put together, and it was great to get to perform everything again, and it just seemed to kind of work. But yeah, so that, and what you just saw was the introduction poem. It's hard to explain who you are in 3 minutes to an audience of strangers. That's why I wrote the introduction poem. I think if you kind of have just seen that now, then there's a lot of things that you know about me now, and that's where we're going to be using as a starting point. This is a workshop about telling your own story. Spark, that's my story. It is my personal story. It's about the women in my family. It's about learning about witches and tying those stories together, and that's my story. And I went through a process of finding that out, finding what that story was, and then being able to turn it into a show. This is about your stories, and also about the idea of a witch hunt. It came in a lot when I was actually researching the show, and I found it useful for going forward, just knowing that persecution and witch hunts are very much still here today. I'm going to go into that more later. But yes, so what you will need for this, because this is going to have some practical writing exercise as well, which I hope you enjoy. All you really need is your notebook and a pen. There's a portion later on where I talk about, I do a writing exercise that involves post-its. But that's just the kind of, that's how it helps me think. I like to write things down on post-its and jam them on the wall because it helps me be able to move around my thoughts. If that is not something you do, you can absolutely just do it in your notebook. So that's all you need. So let's get started. Okay, before I talk about poetry or techniques, or we go into any writing exercises, or I tell you about the witches that I've learned about, we're just going to talk about stories. Our stories are very important. As a filmmaker, I learned this about narrative. We need to have a good film script, you need to have characters that are flawed and relatable, go through something that the audience can identify with. And you might not have actually had to go through that thing personally yourself to still know that that's identifiable. That's narrative, that's stories, that's about people that we can connect with. There is no reason to think that your personal story isn't worthy of the big screen. Just put that idea in your head. Your stories are absolutely worth listening to. Just start thinking about that now. Over history, stories change in the telling. That's another thing. There are things that we lose as years go on, names and places, and there's a lot of things like, for example, I didn't know until very recently that Charles Rennie Mackintosh's wife was also an incredible artist, and I got taught about him in school loads of times. Things fall off, the stories that actually make up the bigger picture start to fall apart as the years go on. Also, history books are often written by men. So there's a lot of women that we don't know about, and that's a shame. I'm going to start by telling you about the key figure in the show of Spark. She's a witch called Jenny Horne, and she's the last one to ever be burned in the UK. Shall we? The year is 1792. And our story takes place in the Highlands of Scotland. In Dornoch, there lived a woman called Janet Horne, but everyone called her Jenny. Now Jenny had a daughter who was born with twisted and deformed hands and feet. The village where the two women lived were always suspicious of Jenny and her strange, shy daughter. These suspicions turned to whispers. I heard the girl's hands and feet are like cloven hooves. I heard the devil himself shot the girl. I heard Jenny Horne by the light of the moon rode on her own daughter's back, aft to meet with the devil himself. These whisperings turned to out-and-out accusations by the time Jenny herself was quite old. They say they heard her talking to herself, heard her calling down the devil on all of them, so one day they came for them both. They battered down the cottage doors and grabbed them. The daughter escaped, and poor Jenny was put inside a tar barrel and had the wood piled up around her. It is said in some accounts that as the flames rose higher, she stretched out a hand and said, "That's a bonny warming," before the fire rose and took her. They searched for months, but they never found Jenny Horn's daughter. It's like she vanished. Less than a decade later, the practice of witch burning was outlawed in the UK, and to this day, Jenny Horn is still known as the last witch. I love any story that I can get away with shoving a torch under my chin to tell. So that was a real moment. The reason I found Jenny Horn's story so interesting, and I go into this a lot more in the show, is that that's the story that I heard. But when you think about it, all accounts say that Jenny Horn's daughter was born with really badly twisted and deformed hands and feet. And yet she still managed to escape a mob of angry villagers. Now, I'm not suggesting that something else happened. I've got no idea. But it just calls into question, and there's no way for us to ever find out, and I find that really sad. Imagine if Jenny and her daughter were able to tell their story and have that passed down through history. What would it say differently? And that's the thing, it would be them telling their own story in their own words, and that's what I think we should get into the habit of doing more often, telling our own stories. Now, that is way more difficult than I'm making it out to be. There are so many things that are going to get in the way. I'm going to talk about authenticity a lot. I'm going to talk about confidence a lot. I'm going to talk about the barriers to telling your own story. But we're going to talk about them, work through them, and then we're also going to try and counter those barriers with writing exercises. The introduction poem is a way to walk onto a stage and have 3 minutes to tell a room full of strangers who you are. And that is hard. But at the end of this, what I'm hoping is that you should be able to go away and write your own introduction poem. Something that you're happy that you could walk into a room full of strangers and just let them know a bunch of stuff that says exactly who it is that you are. So we're going to jump straight in with our first writing exercise, so notebooks at the ready. And I'm going to get you to start straight away by writing a poem. And before everyone freaks out and goes, I've not looked or read a poem or written a poem since I was like in high school, and then I had to analyze it until my face fell off. Do not worry, that's absolutely not what we're doing here. So when I was in school, I absolutely hated poetry. The over-analysis and what I felt were very strict rules in how you had to structure your writing and lay it out on the page. I found it so constricting and I absolutely despised it. It's only when coming to poetry as an adult, and specifically spoken word poetry, I realised that poetry can be literally anything that you want. I have been to probably hundreds of poetry events now, and I have seen so many different artists stand up and read things out, and at no point has it ever crossed anyone's mind been like, is that a poem? But because the freedom with spoken word poetry is the fact that no one gets to see your page. It doesn't matter how it's set out, it's about how you perform it. It lives in that space where you say it out loud, which is extremely freeing. Now, I completely understand that it can still be really daunting looking at a blank page and thinking, how do I even start to write like a poem? Do I make it rhyme? Do I not? The answer is it's completely up to you. You go up there and open your mouth at a poetry event. It's poetry, no questions asked. It can be absolutely anything you want to be. But to break us out of the habit of writer's block, or to just kind of shake ourselves loose a little bit, I've got 3 examples of what poems can be that you can try from yourself at home. Now, the first one is a list. I don't know about you, but I absolutely love lists. I have lists on post-its literally all over my house that have various numbers ticked off at any given point. It just helps me figure things out. List poems are a great way to get started. Pick a subject, write a 1 to 10 and write a list. Read that list out loud and then it is all of a sudden a poem. An example of a list poem: 10 things I'm worried about writing poetry. 1, feel like an idiot. 2, I'm on number 2 and I still feel like an idiot. 3, I've not looked at poetry since I was in high school, and even then I remember not liking it. What's the difference now? 4, this is actually kind of easy. 5, look at me, I'm writing a poem. 6, I could go on and on and on. Ad-libbing poetry. Let's never do that again. That is a poem. Pick a subject. I'll give you maybe a couple of examples. So yeah, 1, things that I'm terrified about writing poetry. 2, how about why X should be banned from the earth. Pick one thing and then vent about it. 3, 10 things I wish I knew 10 years ago. It's always a good one. And then just get writing. Doesn't matter how long. You can have 1-word lines, you can have 20-word lines. It's entirely up to you. Just write and see what comes out. That's your list poem. That's number 1. I'm not saying you have to write all 3 of these things in a writing exercise. This is just one example of something that you can write. Number 2 is a recipe. I love looking at recipes and then swapping some things out, because recipes are great because they have really clear instructions, and they also give you a lot of room to play with words that you would expect to find in a recipe. If you have a recipe book at home, or just look one up online, find one, take it out, and then start to change some of the words to tell a different story. I recently wrote a poem in the form of a recipe that I don't have in front of me, which would have been really helpful right now I think about it. Can't bother going to print it, so I'll just talk about it. I wrote about specifically what started off as the pressure of cooking for a big number of people. I don't know whether anyone's kind of had this, but have you ever seen someone who is so comfortable in a kitchen cooking for 10 and they just never get flummoxed? And if you try to cook for 4 people, pots are burning and it's just so hard to keep on top of everything. It's a mental challenge to keep everything together, and it's also a pressure, especially for women, to feel that they have to perform this sort of this nurturing role of cooking, sort of thing, this motherly role of cooking. I love cooking, and I love cooking for a large number of people, but I come out of it looking like I've run a 10k. Like, it's an absolute mess. But it is really nice to go back to recipes and look over the recipes and see if there's ways you can swap it out. When I say you can play around with language a lot, think about this. Number 4, stir up the memories of your mother. See if it smells the same the way you cook it, compared to what she does. Again, we're not doing ad-lib poetry, it's not a thing, but it's the use of the word, things like stir, add, mix. These are things that you can use. We're not referring to food. So pull out a recipe and see if you can change it to turn it into a story about something else. An easy way to do one is talk about remembering cooking with someone, or how you learn to cook. Use a recipe to talk about how you learn to cook. That is example number 2. If that draws you there, then let's do that one. If you're really struggling to write something, you're not ready to put pen to page right now, that is absolutely fine. But a good example, just to, again, shake yourself loose and get into the habit of putting things together and being like, yeah, that makes a poem, is spine poems. I love spine poems, even though they makes no sense. Spine poems is when you pull out books or DVDs and lay them on top of each other and read the spines and form a poem. It can be as simple or as complex as you want, but we're going to have some time to actually write just now. So if you're like, I don't want to write anything, neither of those examples seem like something I can actually put pen to paper of, then just dig through your books and DVDs and see if you can come up with something, even if it's silly. I cheated because I pulled out a couple of examples before, but let me just show you. So I found 3 books that have, oh, I needed that one. Oh no. It's not going to plan, guys, it's not going to plan. So I pulled out these ones as well, and I'm going to layer them on top of each other. You're not strictly meant to add any ands or as, but it's a writing exercise, so who cares? So if you want to pull out some spines and then I need an and or a but, or just a joining line to link these spines together to make something that I'm happy with, then you absolutely go for it. There is no stopping you. Who's going to know? So here's my one as well. Going to see if I can get the camera to focus on this. The man in the high castle and the last children of Tokyo, to be taught if fortunate of time and stars. That's a poetry verse, and I could go on for that, but I could get lost in spine poems for ages. So again, if that's something that you want to do, then absolutely do it. The thing that I love about this art form is that it's accessible. Making films is hard, getting a book published is hard. I mean, this can be hard as well, but it's accessible. You can at any point just stop and go, I need to write something down and say it out loud. And that is what's great about spoken word poetry. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 10 minutes. There's going to be a 10-minute card that comes up on the video. If you want to just write down a note of all these exercises and then just get on with the webinar and then come back to them later, that is absolutely fine. Just skip ahead and then you can do them in your own time. If not, then you're going to have 10 minutes to do either of the 1, 2 or 3. So that's the list poem, the recipe poem or the spine poem, and good luck and see how you get on. If you rattle through one and have a great time, move on to the other ones. There's nothing stopping you. Use the 10 minutes how you want, but let's just get into the habit of writing something and have the confidence to say, wrote a poem. That is a poem and that is one of yours. So have fun. Okay, so now we know that literally anything can be a poem and you cannot get this wrong. Let's come back to witches. Why witches? I have always been obsessed with witches because they are basically just women with power who live outside societal's norms. That sounds like my jam. Scotland burned more than 5 times the average number of witches per capita than anywhere else in Europe. There was over 2,700 witches burned, and there is only one grave. It's in Fife, and the reason that there is a marked grave is because they were scared of this woman so much. They thought that the devil was going to raise her up. So they buried her ashes and placed a large stone over it so that she couldn't get out. And that is the only monument we have to over 2,500 women who were accused and burned of witchcraft, mainly by a strictly religious and conservative era. How do we know that if nothing like that's ever going to happen to us, but how do we ever know that we're not just going to be a number with no marked graves? There's nothing written about any of these women. We need to be able to tell our own stories so that they can be handed down. They can be recorded. We can speak up for ourselves, and also, especially with what I did with Spark, speak up with people who don't have a voice anymore. It's a lot of speculation, but at the same time it's still giving women that didn't have a voice a voice. A good example of this is the incredible musical Six, which is about the 6 wives of Henry VIII who form a girl group and then sing about their experiences. And then they ask the question, what if things didn't go that way? What if we found each other sooner? And it's completely hypothetical, but it's given these women who have been reduced to a rhyme to help you pass your hires. They've been reduced to this 6 rhyme, and they deserve more than that in their story, and this production gives that. There are ways for you to do that as well for things that you care about. I'm talking in really broad terms, so how does this all link together? Jenny Horn and witch hunts. What I'm trying to get at is that there are still witch hunts today. To do an introduction poem, to go onto a stage and to just tell a bunch of strangers who you are, that is extremely difficult. And let's start thinking about the barriers. When I talk about barriers, I talk about things that would possibly stop you from doing that. Mine particularly, I am a plus size woman. So when I walk on stage, I'm instantly worried that people are already going to be thinking certain things about me. That's a barrier. I kind of feel like I have to play to an expectation because of what I look like. That's a barrier. My accent, that can be a barrier. If I'm not performing in Glasgow, if I'm performing elsewhere, do I tame down my accent even though I might be speaking, and if it's for me to speak very authentically, especially about like older figures who have than me that have stronger accents, like my grandmother. I have a number of poems about my granny. Am I worried that they're not going to come across, and do I then have to change the way I tell that story so that other people will understand? That's a barrier. I am working class, and quite a lot of people perceive poetry to be some sort of high art form. Am I going to walk on stage, people are going to be like, she's a bit trashy. That is me worrying about it, but that is a barrier. Let's be honest, right now men and women are not equal. The struggle for gender equality goes on, and I'm not even going to get into it this way. But I want to talk about something that hopefully illustrates my point. In the show, I talk a lot about hysteria. I talk about being called hysterical, specifically as a woman. Hysteria was once a medical diagnosis for women, a very common medical diagnosis for women. You were considered hysterical if you exhibited symptoms such as anxiety, nervousness, fainting, insomnia, loss of appetite for food or sex, or, God forbid, you actually showed that you like sex. And it was categorised as a disease. In extreme cases, women would have had to go into an insane asylum or have undergone a surgical hysterectomy. Now, hysteria has a different name today. It's mass psychogenic illness. If you put it simply, it is when severe psychological pressures cause the body to have physical symptoms. Put another way, it's smoke without fire. There is a fantastic podcast on Audible that entirely about hysteria that is presented by Alice Lowe that I definitely recommend you check out. It talks about women throughout history and how basically women under severe psychological pressure start to feel each other's pain. A classic example of this is the Salem witch trials. What started the Salem witch trials and what also inspired the play The Crucible by Arthur Miller is that in a very strictly devout Puritan community, the minister was living with his niece and his daughter, who were 9 and 11, I think. And think about the environment that those girls would have been living in. They would have been very, very repressed because of their community, but they would have been under a lot of stress as well, just trying to settle in a new place, and the constant tensions that were happening between the settlers and the Native Americans at the time. They would have been under so much pressure, and one day the minister's daughter started to make animal sounds and twitch and moan and roll around, and the next day the niece started to do the same, Abigail. And then other women started to do the same in the community, and it is because the psychological pressure they were all under started to show physical symptoms, and as women they started to feel each other's pain, and because there was nothing physically wrong with them, they were quickly accused of witchcraft. When you think about how we used to think about hysteria. We used to think about hysteria, and that was common in medical at the time, and we look back on that and think, my God, how do women put up with that? How could we ever have done that? How could that have ever have been a thing? What's to say that in many, many years from now, people don't look back at the small inequalities that are still, well, I won't say small, the inequalities that are still there between men and women? How do we know that when people look back years from now, they don't think, oh my God, how did they put up with that? And that is just normal life for us. What I'm saying is what we should be doing just now is to help people understand how we got here and how we moved on from that. We should be telling our own stories at this point because they're important. We need to be talking about what our lives are, and I'm not just talking about gender issues and modern day persecution. Those are heavy subjects. I have poems about my teeth. Poetry is an incredible way for you to play with language and to talk about your experiences without actually having to talk about your experiences. It's a wonderful, wonderful tool. Anyway, I'm getting off book a little bit. I'm jumping all over the place. But anyway, to sum up the hysteria section, what I want to kind of say is that was medical. It was a medical diagnosis, and we had the time of Salem. Going back to Jenny Horner, who was burned for being old and strange and talking to herself and all sorts. If we look back on that today, Jenny's symptoms were nothing more than symptoms of dementia. When people look back on us, what are they going to think? And how can we help them understand our experiences? By telling our own stories. Okay, we're going to move on to our second exercise. This is where I have my notebook and I have my post-it notes. So if you have post-it notes, then find a space where you can chuck them up on the wall. If you have a whiteboard, fantastic. If you don't and you just want to use your notebook, that is absolutely fine. So I'm talking a lot about stories and why we should tell yours and things. And that can be an intimidating thing as well. You're kind of like, oh, well, what stories do I have to tell? I went to the shops last week, I've not been doing much lately, I love my dog. Like, it can be difficult to kind of figure out about finding your voice. That can be difficult, finding out what it is that you have to say and how it is that you say it. Now, I've got an exercise that I think will actually help. The blank page can be extremely intimidating and it can be put a lot of pressure on yourself. Also, if you take a swing at this and then it doesn't go well the first time, it's so easy to go, well, I've got nothing interesting to say, and that is absolutely not true. And hopefully this exercise will convince you of that very, very soundly. So what we're going to do is kind of figure out find your stories. We're going to find out how it is that you, what stories that you have to tell. So what I've taken in my notebook, I've taken a page in my notebook and I've divided it into 4. Let's see if you can focus on it, please. Okay, so I've divided it into 4. So this category is me. So that's me. This one here is things I love. But I think what a better way to describe it is that things I care about enough to talk about. So that's that. Down here is things that I hate. Again, things that I dislike enough to talk about. And then here is things that have happened to me. Now what I want you to do, I'll just read those one more time. Top left is me. Top right is things that I love or things that I care enough to talk about. Bottom left is things I hate or things I dislike enough to talk about. And bottom right is things that have happened to me. So that's what I want you to do is to fill these up as much as humanly possible. So, and I'll give you some examples of what I'm thinking about. So I'm going to use my post-its. I just realised I've kind of got nowhere to stick them on, so I'm just going to whack them on my books and see if that helps, but hopefully. So I've got my orange ones for me. So the first one is that I am a big sister. That's a huge part of my identity. Me and my sister are really tight and we've got a real bond. So I'm a big sister. I am plus size. I think I'm funny. You probably disagree. If I carried on doing this exercise for real, I'd be going for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. I've only got 3 there. I think a good one to try and get at least 10 in each category. It shouldn't be difficult. If it's difficult, then you're thinking too hard about it. Just some things about you. Let's go on to things that I love or things I care about enough to talk about. My family. A huge portion of my show is about the women in my family. It's about my grandmother and my aunts and my mum and the kind of traditional female role in my family. Feminism. Yeah, it's a broad thing that I love, but it's broad, but it's good all around. Trans rights. Absolutely all about trans rights. I am a trans ally to my toes. Confidence. So I care so much about confidence because I think it literally can change your life. So I'm going to put confidence in my little thing here. Back to the things that I hate. Yellow for the things that I hate. Mansplaining. Oh, there's nothing worse telling me how to do my job and tell me things that I already know. I'm like, people who don't use their indicators. I should say drivers who don't use their indicators. Oh, that's what they're there for. BMW drivers, I'm looking at you. And I've put the pink tax or beauty standards. So the beauty expectations that are placed on women. Again, that is extremely general, but we're keeping it general for this one. That's going up in the things that I dislike enough to talk about. Things that have happened to me. That does not have to be anything really deep. I have been to a wedding. These are not meant to be deep. These are just meant to be circumstantial because they're going to help you figure out how to write the bits that are important. These I think are the important bits of things about you and you want to talk about. These are going to be the things that help you do that. So they're not really important. Another thing is I had braces. These are the only examples that I have just now. So hopefully while I've been rambling on, you've been writing your own list as well. What's going to happen now is that if you look at your post-its or look at your notebook and look at everything that is like that's laid out in front of you, you should be able to pick one thing from each column that is a story. And you're like, oh no, that is a story that I can actually talk about. So, an example that I'll have from these ones here. Me, I am plus size. So that's me, I'm plus size. I'm really big about confidence and I do not like beauty standards. And I have been to a wedding. All of a sudden there is a story there. And it's a story that I've told in a video before, and it is about chub rub. It is about the expectation to wear a tight dress on a hot day, and if you forget your chub rub shorts and your plus size, then your day is ruined. Absolutely ruined. And it can genuinely, and you think, why didn't I just wear a suit? Why didn't I just wear trousers? And you have that thing in the back of your head being like, oh, but isn't it expected of me to wear a dress? That's a hang-on from God knows where. I wear suits to all weddings now. But anyway, that's a story. That is a story that I have to tell. I can tell you about a time that I went to a wedding, forgot to wear my chub rub shorts, and was miserable the whole day because of it. That's a story that I have to tell. That is my experience. And also, when it says that is me using my first-hand experience as a person because I'm plus size, and I am talking about things that I care about. Also, I get to pull in the fact, funny, I can make that as funny as I want. Talking about chub rub, doesn't seem like I'm being serious, but even though, I can do it in a comedic way, I can talk about these two things that I care enough about to talk about. So sometimes even just doing this exercise and just writing down things that you know that about yourself that are making you angry but are making you hopeful, and things about you and your experiences sort of things might be able to help you pull something together that you can write and just you can figure it out yourself, and not even to tell or to show anyone. It's just going to help you figure things out. I really hope that that's something that you can kind of come back to. So again, I've been rambling on a little bit, so we're going to take a short break for this writing exercise. I'm only going to put 3 minutes on, because hopefully you kind of have all these, you have all your notes down already. But what's going to happen is that you are going to write 3 to 5 things, more if you have them. Look at your board, look at your post-its, look at your notes, and write down 3 to 5 things that start with a poem about. Pull things together, even if it doesn't make sense and it's, you don't know what that poem sounds like already. Hopefully there's at least one that's jumping out going, I already know what that poem sounds like. I can hear it. It's a list, it's a recipe, it's just me talking like, you know, like that's something I want to write about. Look at your post-its, pull out the things about you, the things that you love and your situations, and write a poem about those and add those things in. You don't have to come back to them later on, you don't have to come back to them ever, but hopefully if you write down, say, a poem about this, that is a story that you can tell. And you might never get around to telling it, you might never want to tell it, that is absolutely fine, but maybe if you do want to tell it, that's going to start what I call incubating in the back of your head. That story's going to start to like whisper itself to you, and sooner or later you're going to realize that it's telling you what to write in your voice, and then it's time to sit down and write it. Hopefully this is the start of many, many poems. I will say this is a really, really important note, is that things that kind of happen and that you can put down in, especially your me and things that happen to me, there is quite a lot of, I don't want to say popularity, but there's quite a lot of applause that happens for people who feel that they are kind of like, who put a lot of like their own very, very personal, often trauma, into their poetry. They talk about their experience as a way to do that. I want to make it as abundantly clear as ever, there is never, ever any expectation for you to do this. Your experiences are yours and nobody else's. As much as I'm very much like, this is about performance poetry, you can go up and say this and introduce you to a room full of strangers and all that. Anything on those lists that are for you, they're for you. No one deserves them. No one needs to have them. Those are yours. Those are private. No questions asked. It's never going to make your poetry better. It's never going to give you kind of like better things. It is up to you what you do. Never feel that you have to share things that you don't want to. That is a very, very important point before we move on with this exercise. Sometimes things come up when writing that you kind of think, this is something that I need to write, it's for me, it's private, I'm going to read it to myself in the mirror, and then I'm going to put it in a drawer, no one's going to see it as well. Hopefully that is something that can help you, but just remember that that is yours and no one else is entitled to that. Very important point. I'm going to put the 3 minutes on the clock, and good luck with your writing your list. A poem about. Go. Put very simply, we need more women's stories. I really hope that in doing the writing exercises today and in listening to me ramble on about the creating of Spark and the witches and Jenny Horn and Hysteria and all sorts of other nonsense, I hope that you realise that you have hundreds of stories in you that people need to hear, that are interesting and that are valid. And I really hope that poetry is a tool that you can use to help you figure those things out. Poetry helps you play with language, it helps you have fun, it helps you get across a point that sometimes is difficult to articulate. And I'm dyslexic, I sometimes find it very hard to actually put into words what it is that I'm thinking. And poetry really helps me do that. Sometimes I'll sit down and go, I want to write about something, and then just something will just appear on the page and it will be completely different, but it will help me figure things out. Poetry helps me figure things out, and I really hope that it helps you figure things out and it allows you to tell great stories. And I really hope that one day I get to hear them. If you've enjoyed them and you end up writing something, please share them with me. I am desperate to hear. Okay, so I think that's everything. I've rambled on enough. I think that is everything that I have to say in this webinar. Thank you very, very much for joining me. Again, like I said, if you would like to share any of your work, I'd be absolutely delighted to hear it. Please do remember to check out the Young Women's Movement for all the other incredible webinars that are happening here and the campaigns that are happening. They do incredible work for young women in Scotland. It is a pleasure to be doing this as a part of a series for them. If you enjoyed everything I had to say, everything that I had to say about Spark, and you want to see more, I will somehow, maybe in the description or something, not sure technically, but somewhere they will be available. I will make available the link to watch Spark the Bedroom Edition if you'd like to see the full show. But yes, thank you so much for joining me, and good luck with all your writing, and I look forward to hearing all of your stories.